after someone learns about charts, Michele, how do they progress? How do they build a style in their trading plan, a very specific way of how to do things so that they become a professional in that method of whatever they're trying to do so they have a good chance of succeeding?
Well, one of the biggest factors is first determining what type of trader you are. Day trader, mini swing trader, position trader. If you want to be all above, it's possible. But if you go into a trade without some predisposition as to what your objective is for that trade, then I think that's dangerous for you. So, for example, let's say you're buying something because you've researched it, you know it's going to reach certain points that you're interested in getting in, and you know your risk. At that point, what is your risk based on? And I think that's where a lot of people fall apart. They just go in and they didn't have a game plan. They didn't have a real risk in mind, or they had a risk in mind but not necessarily the objective in mind, or they decided they wanted to keep it overnight just because they didn't know what to do with it during the day. So it's really important to say, I'm doing this as a day trade. And then if you're doing a day trade, you should never have more risk than a one-to-one risk reward. If you're doing it as a mini swing trade, then I think you want to go more to a 2-to-1 and then define what is a mini swing trade for yourself. And of course, if you're a position trader, then you really have to be very clear, because the temptation to get out before the position itself is realized is great, so you have to have that discipline. So all of that works for you. And I also think the other big issue that people have, probably the biggest issue, even bigger than all the others, is position sizing. People don't know how much of their capital they should risk at any given time.
Or how many positions they should be in at a time.
Exactly. And so these are all the things that we teach, but also, I talk about constantly with people as a guide. If you be in no more than 2-3 positions, if you don't have your full attention on this. Max, I think, for anybody should be 7 positions. I mean, even Keith and me, who trade all the time, if we start getting more than 10 positions, we start cutting back. So you have to know that, and then you also have to know how much capital you're risking every time you go in, and making sure that you're not throwing it all onto one trade, which I see people do. And then the other horrible thing, of course, is scaling down on a loser. If there's one thing that anybody would learn from trading, it's never add to a loser. Ever, ever, ever.
To start finding a trading plan, you got to have a starting point, and then you start moving one way or the other. So what kind of style, whether swing trading, position trading, would you suggest people start at or feel it out, and where would you suggest people start?
Well, there are books that are written that have surveys so that you can get a better feel for what type of person you are, number one, and also what type of time do you have to commit. Because I get people who are retired, who sit in front of the computer all day, and then I get people who are working full-time jobs and will just look in on the market maybe once or twice a day. And now, of course, with iPhones and things like that, they can keep abreast of what's going on, but they don't have the real attention. So you've got to really step back and look at your whole picture. How much time do you want to devote? How much time do you realistically have? Even your own physical space of where you trade is important. I mean, are you trading in the living room where your kids are running in and out during the day distracting you? Or do you have a really good, quiet, designated space? I mean, all these things are factors. So and I think a lot of people don't really sit back and really analyze that in themselves. But okay, so let's assume now that you do have a quiet space. You want to devote, say, several hours a day to doing this, if not full time. Then probably the best way to learn, I would think, would be on a day trading basis. And also people ask me about paper trading. I think that paper trading is not a really great way to learn. I would rather see you trade 5 shares at a time, but real money invested, because you really don't know what kind of emotional reaction you're going to have on your winners or your losers until you've got some real money on the line. So I would say if you've gotten your terminology, you've got your space, you've got your time, you have your platform set up and everything's ready to go, you feel like you've gotten a pretty good basic fundamental education, start with a day trading mentality, and then you can build from there.
Is it because there's so much more going on, you can learn things a lot faster?
Well, I think you're just not going to risk as much. And so if you're day trading and you're keeping an eye on the market, as long as you understand, and this again goes back to having an education. I mean, you should know what the average true range is of the stock that you're trading. Is it a 40 cents average true range, or is it a $10 like Google average true range? Right. So you really need to understand that, because then you can think in terms of risk more realistically. Well, I'm only going to risk a half of an ATR. Well, what does that mean to you? If it's 20 cents in a 40-cent stock, well, chances are you can afford that. But are you going to risk $5 as a newbie trader in Google? Not necessarily. So that's why I say day trading, because I think that gives you the best. Well, it's like a floor trader. I mean, what I did as a floor trader is I day traded for years until I started taking home longer term positions and learning about options, and then getting really fancy and doing spreads, and then eventually cracks in NYMEX, which is when you trade all three, heating oil, natural gas, and crude oil in their relationships, which some people that's all they did. They were experts in that. I just sort of fooled around.
What do you tell people to keep in their journals or records? Because if you want to make progress, you have to know when you got in or why, and does that fit to your trading plan?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's important to keep a trading journal. I do. In fact, it's sitting right here on my desk with me. I write down all the trades that I make, where I got out, what I think my mistake was, and I sort of keep a running log of that. And so, yes, and also because I have the advantage of working with Keith, who is incredibly disciplined and has a little bit of a different philosophy. He's more of a longer-term trader. I'm more of a short-term trader. Even though we both cut our teeth on the commodities exchange, I have a person that actually keeps me in check, who says, before I actually push the order button, what's your objective? What are you doing this? Is this a day trade? Is this a mini swing? Is this a position trade? And sometimes I just want to yell and scream at him and say, go away. But I know that, if you don't have somebody standing there next to you doing that, you should have that written down in your journal. What is my objective? What am I looking for as a target? How much am I risking? What is my position size? And then keeping track of what you've done on that trade and seeing, and I don't even like to call it mistakes. I call it feedback.
That's a good point. A lot of individual traders, they don't have a risk manager. I know a lot of professional firms, they have that. So because a person can always lose control and not be logical at a certain point, and you need somebody to balance and check you out.
Exactly. And trading can be a very lonely business. And so if you are a trader sitting by yourself, join a chat room, find a forum, get on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I love Twitter. I mean, obviously, that's something that you and I do a lot. We tweet with each other, and there are several traders that I do, not because I want to hear what they're doing, because actually I almost prefer not to sometimes, but just because it's a great way to communicate with people and help you stay in check.
What's your Twitter handle, and so how can people follow you and see what you're doing?
At Market Minute is how you find me on the public forum. I also have a private Twitter service, but those are for my people who subscribe to my service.
So people who subscribe to your service, they get alerts from Twitter, and that's how they follow along with you?
Yes. I'm juggling trading, doing videos, and tweeting on two different services, the private and the public. But it's fun because, don't forget, I'm used to being on the floor where multitasking was sort of a natural way to keep me, believe it or not, calm. And so this is sort of a way that keeps me calm because I'm doing so many different things at once. I'm not sitting there staring constantly at every single tick.
Mm-hmm. Would you mind if people watching this video want to submit their homework to somebody like you to review, so they can find you on Twitter and send you that?
Oh, absolutely. I have many people who email me, and I'm pretty fast. I designate time every day to answer people's emails, so of course I'm happy to do that. And my email address is mish@marketgauge.com. So if you follow me at Market Minute, I'm always happy to give out that information. And in fact, it's actually on my Twitter profile.
Okay, wonderful.